everybody. This is Peter Mullins here on another conversation on Fora. Really excited to have Shelley Cernel here, who's the head of marketing at DebtBook. So, Shelley, welcome. It's great to see you again.
Thank you. It's nice seeing you again as well.
Excellent.
I'm jealous of your patio. I wish I could be sitting there instead of my office.
Well, and hopefully the fern won't make a special guest appearance.
We're doing a between two ferns for marketing.
That is exactly it. Well, I appreciate you joining. So maybe, if you don't mind, maybe you can give a bit of background on your history in marketing and some of the roles that you've had.
Sure. So I did the traditional grad school for marketing, BS and MS in global branding and marketing. Did some consulting work, did teaching, trying to figure out, do I want to go into industry or education? But through all those experiences, I found that my sweet spot was really in startups and having the opportunity to get your hands dirty, get involved in sales and marketing, in client operations, even the basic, how's the business functioning? What is our culture? How are we participating in local events? And in that startup environment, you get to have all of those opportunities and experiences that you wouldn't necessarily have at a larger company, and you're responsible for so much more. So instead of being in the one silo and you're doing the same thing all day, every day, go and check a box, every single day is different. There are literally no 2 days that are the same. You go into work expecting to do one thing, something else happens. So it's just a lot more exciting. And I've been in startups. Fintech is really where I found my passions to be. So accounting startups, commercial real estate investing startups, debt and lease cloud management startups. And it's really a similar persona that we're targeting throughout all of them. So you have that similar thread running throughout, and you can kind of use your playbook of, I've tried a lot of things in startups. I've learned my lessons. Right. How can we continually improve, but still see those immediate successes?
So how did you first get that exposure to fintech? Like fintech is, I'm in the fintech space myself, and it's just such a fascinating place to be. So what first drew you there?
I think I almost fell into it the first time. I had some friends that were in the space, and it was right out of college, and they're like, you might be interested in this. We're looking for some marketing people. And it's just something that clicked. There was nothing that in school you're learning about Coca-Cola and John Deere, Coco Chanel. You're learning about all these huge mega brands, and you don't really talk about startups, at least at that time. And it was a completely foreign concept, but it was one that's like, oh, this is interesting because it is so different. And they always say in startups, 1 year in a startup is 7 years at a bigger company. Sure. So in terms of career, it's a huge accelerant in like getting those experiences on your resume and working your way up the career ladder, which I'm not going to turn that down.
That's great. So now you mentioned about the importance of the persona and the fact that you have this consistent persona that you're targeting. So what is your approach to sort of to getting to know a persona and getting to understand how you want to message to them or target them?
It's definitely doing research, working closely, and this is true, sales in general, working very closely with sales and the CS team to align on who are we talking to, what are their pain points and challenges, what keeps them up at night, and how do we address those needs. So taking a step back from, I want to sell you a product, it's, I want to help you solve a problem. Even if you don't want to buy what I'm selling, we have content, thought leadership, and materials, and you can just talk to our people, and we'll help you through that problem. So it's first and foremost being a thought leader and how we can help these people, and truly understanding who they are, what they're looking for. And then after that, it's almost an afterthought. By the way, we have a solution that can help, but that's really not why we're here to talk to you today. We just want to help you out. And that's for all of those fintech startups that I've been at, that's really the approach that I've taken to figuring out what they're looking for, who that persona is, and how to talk to them.
Right. It seems like that helps you with for brand awareness as well. And I've always found that like with when you have a stronger brand, there's just going to be more trust, right? So then when they do decide to join you in a sales cycle, then they're that much further along, I'd imagine.
And I think the other thing too is specifically with fintech, so much of that market has gone uninterrupted. So people have been maintaining the status quo for so long. So a lot of these startups have disruptive technology, and it's that opportunity to not just solve a problem, but these software solutions at the startups, you're defining what that entire product category is. So if it's investor management software, if no one else is doing it, we get to decide what that means in that software. If it's debt and lease management, there are no solutions. We're the first to market. That means we get to decide this is what that solution is. This is what it means to have it. These are the problems it should solve. Here are the features that you should be looking for. Right. So that in itself is a really exciting opportunity. And speaking about thought leadership, that automatically positions you to be the expert in the market. That's when you're the ones making those decisions.
That makes a lot of sense. But how do you even get to that point where you're finding that product market fit, where you're trying to decide, like you may set what those features are, but how do you make sure that it's the right set that you're starting with, so that when people come to the website, they're like, they know that they realize that was what I was looking for. How do you find those?
I think, at least in my experience, the the founders of these companies, they've all been in those shoes. They've had that pain point experience. They're solving a problem, just like I have this problem, I'm going to solve it for myself. Right. Hey, everyone else could benefit. So they're all started with that first person recognition. And that's what builds that initial set of features. Here are all the issues I'm having. If I'm having it, everyone else is having it. And everyone else can solve it in the same way. And then building out from there, you have your customer advisory boards. You do your focus groups, you do the in-app pop-ups asking how should we continue to expand. And some of them, it's in response to changing regulations. Right. That we have to, or it's to help our clients better meet those shifts. But it always starts with that personal problem that you're having.
Got it. Yeah, I love the idea of the founder be the person that's trying to solve that problem. And how do you think about like trying to get in the mind of your CEO to interview them in order to see, what was that original pain? Like, how important is the story of the creation to your message?
Oh yeah, definitely. In all my marketing, same with the thought leadership, being able to tell a story and have that narrative, because one of the things I found, there's a lot of FOMO in the industry. So everyone wants to know, what is everyone else doing? What is their story? Is someone doing something that I'm not? Am I falling behind because I'm not? And that founder who had that problem, I mean, they're setting the trend. They found this way to do XYZ so much better. And a lot of times in fintech, it's about automation. So you're automating some manual process. It's very repetitive, it's mundane. If you can automate that, you can dedicate all that time you save back to value add activities for your organization, which is huge. That means you can find new opportunities, you can identify risks earlier, you can do so much more with your business. And that's something that everybody wants to get on board with. And that's really a common thread in a lot of these fintech startups with regards to the value prop. What can you do with that time that you're saving? And no one wants to do those things anyway. No one wants to spend their day entering numbers into a spreadsheet all day long and checking and double checking. And like, that's not how you want to spend your time.
Right. Yeah. And another element that I think is always important in the buying process is urgency. You may think, yes, I do want to buy this, but maybe I'll buy it next month or next year. But if you're able to tell that story, like you're saying, make them feel like they're leaving something on the table or they're missing out on something, then that urgency means they've got to act as quickly as possible, right?
Exactly. And especially with, regulations are changing pretty quickly now. There was that opportunity during COVID when they kind of put a pause on those things. Right. But now everyone's playing catch up and everyone's pushing out new shifts. So everyone's kind of feeling the crunch now, which is urgency in and of itself. So you have all these different forces saying you need to do something and you need to do something fast. Yeah. And now everyone's just like, they know they need to do something, but because it is such an undisrupted market, they don't even know what they're looking for a lot of times. Right. So it's going to where they are and educating them first before selling them. So they wouldn't even know what keywords to search necessarily, other than like, I don't want spreadsheets, what do I do?
Right. Right, and that seems to be a common thing within fintech, isn't it? That
Hmm.
where when you have management tools, it's often Excel is the villain, isn't it? Where and
Yeah.
they've built up Excel tools over time, and it can be tough because people are comfortable with those tools, aren't they?
Hmm. And there's definitely a time and place for Excel. It's still something a lot of people use, but there are complementary technologies that can enable you to use it better. And I think most people by this point probably heard the stat 9 out of 10 spreadsheets have an error.
Right.
When you're dealing with legal and regulatory entities, those can be very costly mistakes for upstream or downstream, and not to mention your reputation and credibility. So just that, the fear of having those mistakes is a huge motivator for people.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, one thing I just want to go back to is like the idea of, so you have the FOMO there, you have you're encouraging people to act with some urgency, but there's always the other side of the equation. If I think we have a former coworker in common who had an expression which was, you can't make the restaurant too high off the ground. If the steps are too high, people aren't going to want to climb to that restaurant, right? And so tell me if I'm wrong, but with DebtBook, I believe there's a trial, right? So are you able to have more like a product-led growth type model where people can get in, start seeing the value and seeing comparison to how they do it right now?
Yeah, so we don't do trials, but we are pretty flexible in letting, if people don't want to renew, we're not pushing long contracts.
Yeah.
But once they get in, they're pretty much, let's see, it's very sticky. Yeah. And I mean, for any of these tools, if you're going from Excel to Excel, but I have all these other tools and systems that are pulling from that, why would you want to go back? And then why would you want to go back to, this used to take this much time and now I'm going to go back to that?
Right.
So in all of these instances, once people make that commitment, it's a very low chance that they're going to go back. And it takes a while, again, in my experience, for any competitors to come on the market that have a product that is at the same stage that can address those issues. Even if somebody wants to come now, they're still several years behind in development. So the cost of switching ultimately becomes too high for many clients.
Okay, great.
So in situations like that, even though there may not be a trial, if you can get as much of the market signed up as possible, that's going to be more powerful in the long run.
That makes sense. Well, let's switch gears a little bit. I mean, one of the priorities that you had cited was always improving the impact of the marketing organization. Now, one of the things that's fantastic about your career is you've been able to go in as either employee 0 or 1 or 2, build an organization, and then have an exit. And I think, I hope I'm not speaking out of school, but what always seems to be the case is when the acquiring company keeps saying, I can't believe how few people you have in your organization and how small of a budget you have. So let's start. Tell me what your secret is.
So startups, you have to be scrappy. You have to make the most with what you have. So a lot of trial and error. You don't want to make the same mistake 3 times, right. But you want to know what works, what doesn't. Try the things that everyone else isn't trying. Try the new channels, the new methods. And then another key part of that is always be optimizing. You always want to test. Even if you hit a new highest number of people registering for a webinar, awesome. How do we get that higher? So celebrate those wins, but what went right? How can we amplify that further? So you always want to be optimizing, driving down costs, improving the effectiveness of those channels, because you can't, I mean, at some point you do get to more money in, more leads out, but you always have more money to put in. And then structuring a team that is most effective. So I always found the T method to be most effective for my teams. So everyone has a little of everything, but then they're really focused on one specific area and can be the subject matter expert in that area. So people can cover each other. Instead of having a lot of generalists, you have more of that deep knowledge that enables you to be more effective.
Got it. So I know it's going to vary, but how do you think about the first hire? So you go in, you're marketing employee one, you're heading up the organization. You know, what is it? You've got the T, right? But
Mhm.
how do you pick which leg of the T, if you will, you're going to focus on first?
The first one that I almost always go for is on the digital side, it's content with that angle for SEO, SEM. So to be a thought leader, you need a lot of content. You can't just be pushing out a blog post every now and then inconsistently. You need a consistent cadence of regular content coming out, and it has to be high quality. So quality over quantity, but you still need that frequency. And we don't, in the fintech space, you can't be telling people finance 101. They know those things. That's not what they need to know. You need to tell them things they don't know, or things that they'd be looking for. So being able to understand the market and understand what to talk about and how to talk about it, and then turning that into effective pieces of content.
Right.
And then when we're talking about being a startup and having limited resources, one of my old mentors, his name was Peter Mullins, told me about this fantastic idea called the Content Turkey Dinner.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And that's still a methodology I use in my playbook of you make one piece of content, but how can you break it down into other formats? People like to engage with different types of content, and they have different amounts of time. So some people want to watch a video, some people want to read an ebook, some people just want the highlights in a checklist. How can you use that? You do the research once, you write the basic gist once, and turn it into 5 different things. Now you have 5 pieces of content without investing 5 times. So in the startup space, that is immensely impactful. And then even further, you have bite-sized content. So breaking it down even further for like social media, and really maximizing the effort you put into that content.
Right. Okay, great. Now, because you have built up years of fintech experience, do you require your that first hire to have similar industry expertise too, or is it a nice to have?
It's a nice to have. What I do require is people who they know how to research and they know how to write well.
Yeah.
So if you have those 2 things, you can write about anything. But if you don't have those things, even if you've been in the industry, if you go ask a banker to write content, most of the time they probably can't create good content.
Right.
So I need people who can create that effective content. If you can research, you have the subject matter there. So that's really more what I'm looking for. Because again, anybody can learn anything. Everybody started somewhere. And it's once you know which resources these people are using, their pain points and challenges, that part you can learn. Right. It's harder to teach the how to write well, how to do research effectively. And I don't have time to teach people those things in business. I can teach the finance subject matter. We put them through the same training as the sales team and everybody else who has to learn. You don't hire sales reps out of that space either. You hire sales reps who can sell, and they learn how to sell in that space. So we put market. Everybody goes through the same training. We're all the same place, and then you leverage those skills that you bring in.
Right. Well, I seem to remember back many years ago that you and I were not experts at sales technology, and yet learning the space and learning to write about sales related themes. And look what happened. I always think about, number one, you had an article that was the second most popular of the entire year on Salesforce's blog, and then number two, just a few weeks ago, someone, shall we say, borrowed your content to redo a very similar blog post, very similar infographic. So you're absolutely right that everyone can learn.
Yep, good content can be hard to find.
That's exactly right.
You just have to Google deep enough. Go back like 7 years. You'll find some good stuff.
That's right. That's right. So, in fintech, you've got a lot of relationship with finance pros. But do you internally within your companies work a lot with your finance teams, not only just for like subject matter expertise, but you spoke about optimization. I imagine, do you need to work closely with finance in order to get that kind of optimization data, or is it not finance, not really money related that you're thinking about?
It's not really money related. Like we optimize the budget, but it's more with regards to the results. So lead generation, website traffic, click-through rates, emails, webinars, all of those individual marketing tactics and activities. How can we optimize the outcomes of those activities? And there's always a way to improve something. So yes, we want to drive down the cost, so the acquisition costs and where we're spending in the budget. But that's really a marketing skill that I think is newer, is being able to do those analytics yourself. The finance team is more focused on the business overall, paying out sales commissions, paying out our vendor, all of those things. You need to be able to not only write, create content, but analyze the results as well.
Right. Right. Okay, great.
So that's something that I definitely, if for upcoming marketers or really anybody in business, any sort of like analytics course, data analytics is huge. And that's huge for anybody who wants to get into this industry, being able to run those analyses. It's hugely helpful.
Right. Do you have coaches that you rely on? Like like lifetime value, or classically, CAC versus LTV. Are there any that are really like your North Stars?
So the ones that I place the most value on are, I call them my hand raisers. So those are the people, they do a demo request, they email in, they phone in, they fill out a form saying, I want to learn more. Those are people who are literally raising their hand saying, I'm ready to buy your product. I'm self-qualifying and I want it. So above everything else, that is the ultimate. So all of the marketing activities go into creating people who are willing and able to do that. And that's not a metric that is a vanity metric. It's not one that you can fudge the numbers. It's you either have it or you don't.
Right.
So that is my number one metric, and where I kind of waterfall down from. I track all sorts of things. I track the website views, the website traffic, email open rates and click-through rates. All of that is very important. Always optimizing, but those are all metrics that you can manipulate and aren't necessarily going to translate into revenue, especially in a startup. That's all great. If people aren't converting, it doesn't matter. So having those hand raisers and then tracking through the funnel conversion rates. Conversion rates are super important. Where are people falling out and why are they falling out? How can we improve that number? Because we already qualified them.
Right.
If they're qualified, they see a demo, why are they not buying? And what do we need? Is there content that the sales team needs to have better conversations? Is there some piece of material that would help them go back to their internal decision makers and have the conversation? What does marketing need to do with regards to content or messaging, templates of some kind to increase that conversion rate? And again, align with sales, make sure we're all on the same page.
Yeah.
But what can we do to turn them into customers?
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Well, I've really enjoyed the chance to catch up, Shelley, and just to hear about your thinking on it. But one thing I just want to leave you with one last question, though, if you don't mind. It sounds like one of the things that's important to your success is prioritization. So prioritizing things and optimizing it. When you think about your planning for the year, how do you go through and cut off the things you're not going to do, and how do you say no?
Yeah, especially where I am now. There's a lot to do. We're new to the space. Things are opening back up with COVID, so we have like all these events. Yeah. A lot more opportunities than we had that were even available last year. So it's really looking at what will directly generate those hand raisers and the fastest and at the lowest cost. What are those activities? So like paid advertising is huge, and you get to the point with your testing and optimization where X dollars in is Y leads out. And there are levers that you can adjust up and down with the budget. Or with, I need to hit this goal, I'll reallocate from here, put it here. So being able to get to that point where you can fine tune and know like these are guaranteed leads if I do these things. Yeah. That to me is the ultimate, getting to that point where you can guarantee those hand raisers, hit the marketing numbers, and equip the sales team with here are your leads for this week. Right. So doing in terms of prioritization, like what I'm focusing on right now is all of that back end work that goes into getting to that point. So getting the CRM so that we have lead stages and statuses and the pipeline's effectively set up. making sure we have content to share on social media, making sure we have all the forms properly set up and all of the alert processes. So when a hand raiser comes in, I think it dropped from 7 minutes to 5 minutes. You have 5 minutes to respond to that lead, or else it drastically drops with regards to actually converting it into that demo or that meeting. So making sure we have everything set up so that the sales team is on top of it, responding quickly. Everybody has what they need to pull those people through the funnel as fast as possible. So a lot of back end work, but once it's set up and once that engine starts going, then we'll just be filling that pipe, the top of the funnel. And hopefully I've left to flood it. Good problem to have. That's what I'm working towards. But a lot of work up front to get to that point. So priority wise, that's really what has to come first. Those other things are nice, but I mean, if you do it in any other order, you have content forms, the leads drop through. Why did we do that? We're spending money on ads and sales can't get the people. There's no point. So really, process is so huge, especially this year when we have, I mean, sales and marketing teams may be still adjusting after last year. Budgets may be smaller. We're in this kind of like weird catch-up stage. And I feel like companies are on either end of the spectrum. They're either like hire all the people and spend all the money to catch up, or they're still like being conservative. So having the process and fine tuning that, I think, is super important this year.
That's great. Well, Shelley, again, it was a terrific pleasure to catch up with you. I'm really excited to see what kind of success you're going to bring to DebtBook, because clearly your playbook has proven again and again that your strategy works. So excited to see the results.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for your time today. I've enjoyed our chat.
Absolutely.